Hello everyone, I am super excited about today's video. I have some gorgeous and really helpful books that I want to share with you, and all of these books relate to the theme of colour. So I am always looking for different colour combinations, different ways of mixing colours, and it's actually one of the questions that I get asked most from students. How do you come up with your colour palette ideas? How do you create colour palettes that feel like they harmonise together and work well? And so what I wanted to do was share some of the books that I've been using over the years that have helped me to develop my skills around colour. And when I started, colour was actually one of the things that first challenged me. I remember creating quite a lot of paintings where I would look at the painting at the end and just be kind of frustrated because I didn't like the colours. I didn't feel like they were colours that I would choose in real life. They didn't really reflect my personality or what I was hoping for with my art, and they weren't bringing up the emotions and the kind of feeling that I wanted to get into my art. So once I identified this as a challenge in my art, I set about learning as much as I could about colour, and not really in a traditional way, in a more relaxed, experimental, cozy up by the fire with books kind of way, notice colours around me, really start thinking more from a colour perspective. And these are some of the books that have really helped. So I'm going to start with one that is fairly new to me. This one is called Love Colour by Anna Starmer. And it's all about choosing colours in interior design. But I absolutely love interior design books because they give you ideas on how colours will feel in a setting. I don't know, there's just something about them. They add not only colour ideas, but also ideas on pattern and texture. And as you can see, when I've just opened up this page, there's just beautiful patterns here as well. So I use this book not just for the colour palettes, but also for inspiration around mark making, different shapes. So this book has a lovely introduction all about finding inspiration, noticing colour in your everyday life, documenting colour palettes. And I love these little colour stories that she shares in the book. So even just reading through the beginning of this book will get you inspired to gather and collect colour and create mood boards and things like that. And it talks about colour as an expression of your style, all sorts of really good concepts here, moods and emotions. And as we get further into the book, you'll start to see more interior design shots. And I just have to stop here because this pattern is absolutely gorgeous, this wallpaper and this moody colour palette. Now, where was I? So as you get further into the book, it has categories. So you can see here that this section is all about blue. And as you flick through, you can see some colour palette ideas. And it also gives you ideas around quantities. And this is important because when you are coming up with a colour scheme, you want to have a main colour, some supporting colours, an accent or a pop. And when you look at interior design books, they are really helpful for getting you to understand the quantity of colour that you might have in a colour palette in order for it to be pleasing to the eye and work really well together. Once again, I'm struck by the imagery in this book, this beautiful tree pattern. This is already sparking an idea of a sketchbook page or something like that I could explore. So that's the advantage of flicking through books like this. It's not just the colour ideas that will come through, but also ideas on how you can explore colour and the textures and the motifs that you can bring in. So what I especially love about this book is that the colour palettes are very diverse. So you have calming colour palettes, but also some quite vibrant colours, rich palettes. And I've been finding myself attracted to brighter colours and more rich colour palettes lately. And this book has really been fueling that and getting me excited to explore colour in different ways. So something like this page is a great example of that, showing how you could use like a bright pop of orange against blue to create something that's really gorgeous and rich, and even that green there is beautiful. So it's just, yeah, I love this book. I have been flicking through this in almost every art session. And this little pattern here reminds me of the pattern that I used in my sketchbook the other day. And I keep seeing this pattern everywhere. I have a mug with this pattern on it, a scarf with this pattern on it. I don't know why it keeps showing up for me, but it's something that I do like to include in my art. So I could just keep flicking through this book because it is so, so beautiful, but I want to show you some other options as well. But just before I do, I'll just take you into another section so you can just see that you've got these different categories of colour. So if you are more into like the pinks and the peaches and maybe some natural tones, this spread is great. I actually love some of the patterns again and the marks and shapes here. I used this pattern here on a painting in my studio. Just the other day I saw this square kind of diamond pattern and I ended up putting it into a painting. So maybe I'll include that here so you can see how I take ideas from these books and incorporate them into mixed media pieces. So that's that one. And then it's interesting because I have this book and I didn't realise this is by the same author but was made quite a lot earlier. So this one came out I think sometime in the early 2000s. So again, it's Anna Starmer, and this one is the Colour Scheme Bible. Now, it's not quite as delicious as her newer book as far as the imagery and the photographs, but it's really cool for another reason because it has these pages where you can really get to understand a colour palette and you can flick through and understand how much of a quantity of paint colour you might include, get an idea of what kind of accents you could add. It's a really good book for coming up with specific colour palettes for your art. And once again, it's organised into sections. So you can come to the edge of the book and flick through and find the section that you're interested in. So if you're interested in the blues, once again, blues are on my mind, you can then flick through and have a look at some ideas that you could use in your art. And it's actually quite lovely to read about the colour palettes that she's included in the book because she does actually talk about why she's chosen the colours, what some inspiration is related to those colours, kind of gets you into the mood for painting. So this one's really lovely. This one I can imagine using in my art. Not all of them appeal to me, but I can usually find something through flicking through. And it also helps you reveal what is it that you like. So which colour palettes out of all these would you want to look at on your wall or work with? And it will give you some ideas and help you refine your choices. It's also got a nice introduction at the beginning, a little bit similar to the other one, but it will give you some ideas on things like making mood boards and collecting colour in journals and scrapbooks. So sticking with the interior design theme, another book that I like is this one by Rebecca Atwood, Living with Colour. And it's nice to get different designers' perspectives on colour and how they organise their colour ideas. So once again, there's a really nice introduction and overview to that in this book. This one also goes into a little bit around colour theory, how we see colour. So there's some interesting concepts and important concepts to art making at the beginning of this book, and it's explained in a very easy to understand way, so it'll give you a good background. It moves into things like complementary colours, and what else does it have? Different terms for colours, so you can learn about things like what does it mean when you say hue or tint and shade. So just that really good foundational stuff. Lovely photography once again. And then what I really like about this particular book is that it has these gorgeous painted colour palettes on the side. And many of the colour palettes in this book are that little bit more muted down, quite natural. They remind me a lot of some of the work that I've done in previous years when I did work more with muted colours. As I said in this video, I've been exploring a little bit more on the brighter side of things lately, but this I relate to because I've always been drawn to quite muted, earthy, slightly toned down colours. And I still am. I'm just pushing that a little bit lately. I mean, look at these gorgeous mood boards. Now that just makes me want to run into my studio and work on my new mood board, because I have a mood board that I got from IKEA that was in a recent video, and I haven't yet added details to it. And this book and some of the other ones I've shared already would be great inspiration for that. It talks a lot about neutrals in this book and how you can combine them with brighter colours, which is always helpful. And as we get further into the book, once again, organised into colour categories. Throughout this book, there are some gorgeous paintings as well. So that's a bit of a highlight for me. There's some fantastic abstract art, and you can see different kinds of paintings in various interior settings. So that in itself can be inspiring as well. Plenty of pattern and, beautiful design elements to get you going. This book is a really lovely book to sit down and read because it's packed with helpful tips, ideas around how to get in the mood of a colour, understand a colour palette. It's just got a lot of interesting information, and even interesting information around the history of colours. So this one is very much a book that you could sit down with, spend a few hours with, and get inspired in a multitude of different ways. So I couldn't make this video without sharing the book that started it all for me as far as using books to help inspire my art practice. And it's this book, Gypsy by Sabella Court, that first got me fascinated with the idea of using interiors and colour palettes to help me get a better understanding of the colours that I want to use in my art. And as soon as I opened up this book, the first time I looked at it, I had to have it. I loved the paint swatches of the colours, the different art elements that are included, the quite boho eclectic feel of the book in general. And I've used this book many times to just start a painting. I've simply opened up a spread and taken an idea as simple as, this big green expansive spread here, maybe starting a spread using green and some pencil writing. So often I will pick up on various elements in the book and then allow my imagination and intuition to take me in a completely different direction, usually to where I started, but I have those ideas that I can work with. And I just love the colour palettes that are in this book because they are vibrant but also include plenty of muted down colours and neutrals. And that's generally how I like to create my colour palettes too. So it helps me to come up with ideas of how to bring in colour and have sort of some nice vibrancy, but also a calming feel as well. So you wouldn't necessarily need to have all of these books that I've just shared because they are quite similar as far as being interior design books. They talk about colour, they talk about collecting and treasure hunting for colour. They have palettes so that you can get inspired around how to combine things together, mark making, inspirational imagery. It really depends which one resonates with you more. And most of these books you can borrow from a library and check out and see which one you love. But I think in general, just having at least 1 or 2 interior design style books is really helpful when you work in a sort of mixed media, pattern loving, colour loving way as I do. So now I want to share a couple of, I guess, what I would call more practical art theory type books. So the first one is this book by Chris Cozen, and it's pretty much the only colour book that I have in my book collection, and it's super helpful. It explains so many of the colour concepts that you need in your art practice in a really easy to digest way. And there's great examples, exercises. So you're going to learn all about the colour wheel. You're going to learn about mixing tints and shades. What was it? I'm trying to think now. I think this is the book that taught me a lot about muting down colours, and one of the ideas in here that's really helpful for that, if you don't have things like burnt sienna and yellow ochre, is the concept of mixing together a mud-like colour. Let me find it. Here it is. So it's called a mother colour, where you mix together your 3 primaries to create a brown, and then using that colour to mute down some of your other colours so that you get some nice neutral tones and tints. So you can see that here on this page, and this is an idea that I used very early on in my art, and then I have gone on to use it, and then I also use, as I said, things like burnt sienna and yellow ochre in a similar way. But if you don't have all your colours and you just have primaries, I think I've got some primaries here. I've got the yellow and the red anyway. If you had yellow, red and blue, then you can mix up a brown and use that to mute down colours. And it also brings that sense of harmony into your colours. There's so many great concepts in this book that you can apply in your art, and if you want to learn about things like warm and cool colours, value, different types of colour palettes, so complementary, analogous, monochromatic, all of that is in this book, and in a very easy to process kind of way. So I feel like this is a great book if you just want to understand the basics and maybe just go beyond the basics a little bit, go a bit deeper, get into some techniques and some examples. This is a fantastic reference book. And then finally, a recent book that I picked up is this one. I've never had a book like this before. This is 1500 Colour Mixing Recipes for Oil, Acrylic and Watercolour. Achieve precise colour when painting landscapes, portraits, still lifes and more. I've always been the kind of person that experiments in order to come up with the colours that I love. I'm not super great at matching them exactly every time. I sometimes write down recipes, but often I don't. And I thought it would be interesting to read a book which goes into a very specific colour mixing approach, very, like everything's measured, precise is the word. And I have been using this because I have certain ways that I mix colours, but you can mix colours in many different ways using different pigments. And I wanted to get out of the rut of always mixing my colours the same way. And so I've been using this book and actually following some of the recipes, and it's been fun to come up with different colours that I wouldn't normally mix, or I wouldn't mix them in the way that is suggested in the book. So the book is quite detailed. You go into the book, you pick a colour, and it will say to mix this colour you need 6 parts Naples yellow, 1 part cadmium orange, 1 part white, and then you can mix it up. It's helpful. It's helpful to have something like this. I didn't realise how helpful it was until I got it, but I have been in the studio thinking about a colour, thinking, oh, I'd really like a blue or a turquoise or something like that. And I've gone into the book and looked through and realised, oh, if I want it to lean a bit more this way, perhaps I'll use cerulean blue. If I want to get it a little bit more like this, perhaps I'll use some phthalo green and phthalo blue. It's helpful. It's helpful to have something like this. I didn't realise it was, but it is. And the book actually is divided into sections for acrylic painting, oil painting, and watercolour painting. So it's nice to have the differences. So these are some watercolour colour recipes, and you can see those here. You can see that the swatches have been painted out and they look a bit different because they are watercolour. So at the beginning you have your recipes, and then it teaches you about value as well, so you can understand how by adding white or a grey or a black you can change the value of the colour. So you can get your tints and shades. So this is helpful too because you can see how a colour will change, and I really love the addition of adding in a grey, so you can see how colours mute down when you add in a grey, which is a little bit similar to what I was talking about before, where you mix up a brown using your primary colours, but this time you're mixing up a grey and adding it in. And then once you go through that, it has even more information. So there's a lot in this book. It goes into the colours that you might use in different types of paintings. So you've got skin tones, landscapes. It really is a treasure trove of information, and it could be overwhelming, I think, if you decided to look at it in a cover-to-cover kind of way. But the way that I've been using it, I've found quite liberating, and I just look for the colours that I like and see out of curiosity how they are mixed. And I've been turning mostly to the landscape section because they're the colours that I seem to enjoy the most, and just flicking through and getting some ideas on how to mix colours. And I use them in my abstract paintings rather than in landscapes. So I feel like any of these sections you could use for any type of painting. So if you are not sure about how to mix a colour and you have a book like this, I can tell you, you are going to get so much information and be able to use those tubes of paint that you might have but you're not sure how to use. And also you can limit how many colours you have because you'll gain that mixing ability, so you won't need to have all the colours that you can think of because you have the power to mix. So it teaches you how to do that and talks about what kind of colours you might have in your palette to maximise your mixing potential. So I'm pretty impressed with this book. I think it's a worthy one for the art bookcase, and actually it's one that I've been just sitting on my art table because I've been referencing it quite a bit. So I go through phases with these books. I try and use different ones depending on what I'm working on, but at the moment the two that I have been loving on the most and keeping close by have been these two. So in the current phase of art that I am in, where I am interested in mixing different colours, using the tubes of paint that I rarely use, exploring more vibrant and richer colour palettes, these two together have been a fantastic combination. But that's just for me, that's where I'm at with my art. Perhaps some of the other ones were appealing to you, and maybe there's some other books that you might want to share in the comments, and we can get a bit of a comment thread going with favourite books to get inspired in relation to colour palettes. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you've loved seeing these books. I'm actually thinking about doing a few more videos on books, but different categories of books. So I have books that I refer to in relation to imagery and mark making. I have books that I love to read to give my mindset a boost. I have other kinds of reference books that I use in my art practice. So if you are interested in seeing those, let me know that in the comments as well, because I absolutely love books. They're a big part of how I work, and I'd love to hear if you love books too and what you'd love to hear about in future videos.